by inviting our patron, Lady Howe, to the stage. Thank you. Thank you very much, Hannah. And what a lovely, lovely sight it is to see the room full of people having braved the ghastly rain outside. It is a sobering thought that in these days of advanced digital technology and AI and driverless cars, our communities are still faced with the problems of homelessness and severe deprivation. And it has been a very tough year for everyone, with the cost of living crisis giving rise to so many societal problems, and in particular, of course, the acute housing shortage which we're facing, and finding accommodation and then managing rents. We are constantly reminded of the fragility of the housing market and the critical importance of having a safe home. You haven't got an address if you haven't got a safe home. Really, really critical. No one should have to face the consequences of homelessness on their own. And the work that Wycombe Homeless Connection does to support all those in danger of becoming homeless and those who are homeless is absolutely critical. The staff and trustees have worked incredibly hard to build connections, to strengthen relationships with housing providers, and to work in partnership with others to look at solving problems. And they've reached out very successfully to other communities, notably to Chesham and increasingly into Aylesbury. Working in partnership with Buckinghamshire Council, Wycombe Homeless Connection has delivered the winter warmth and severe weather projects to ensure that no one had to sleep on the streets in the winter. The staff team has been built up with the arrival of a support worker and a homeless prevention officer, a volunteer coordinator, business manager, data officer and communications officer, all of whom are helping the charity to become sustainable and more effective. It is incredible to think that it was in 2006 when Sheena discovered a rough sleeper who tragically had died whilst enduring a bitterly cold Christmas Eve night. And this proved to be the catalyst for her to approach others in the local churches to try to provide a night shelter during the hardest winter months, so as to prevent such a tragedy ever happening again. And literally hundreds of volunteers stepped up to help run that night shelter, offering hot meals, showers, laundry facilities, and above all, friendship and conversation. And so it was that the remarkable journey of Wycombe Homeless Connection began. The charity itself was founded in 2009, from small beginnings as a winter night shelter. It grew and it started to have a huge outreach. 2012 saw the opening of the Housing Support Centre here in Wycombe, which I was very proud to open as the new patron. And the extraordinary work of the charity was recognised in terms of volunteer service in 2017, when they, was it 17? 2014, when they received the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service. And then in 2020, Sheena was recognised with the British Empire Medal, fitting recognition for her vision and drive, which has seen the charity move from focusing primarily on the shelter and working with rough sleepers to a growing organisation which now tackles the root causes of homelessness and fights for the rights of people who are experiencing and facing homelessness. So two recent initiatives have been introduced. The Truth and Grace Project has very successfully been initiated, where people who were stuck in homelessness have been offered one-to-one intensive specialist support. And through this, housing solutions have been found. And many of these people had really lost hope of ever getting themselves off the street. And then the Homelessness Prevention Project has been incredibly successful, with many more evictions prevented than had been predicted, and a growing presence in Cheshire at the drop-in centre. So none of this charity work could happen without ongoing fundraising. And I know that a successful big sleep out was held in 2022, and I think it was held here. Yes. With over 100 people gathering and many more at home as well, and £25,000 was raised. The reality is that though the cost is the reality though is that the cost of living crisis is impacting the capacity of the charity to raise funds. It's impacting all charities, and Wycombe Homeless Connection is no different. So the inclusion of the charity on the Wycombe Monopoly Board provided some welcome publicity and kept the profile of the charity alive in locals' minds. And 2 successful art exhibitions were also held, highlighting the experiences of people who are homeless. So I would like to thank all those who are generous donors and who contribute to the work of this exceptional charity. As always, the staff team, supported by the most brilliant volunteer force, have made such a difference to the lives of many who are at crisis point. And I'd like to pay tribute to that fantastic staff team who are always willing to go above and beyond in their efforts to help those who are struggling. And secondly, I would like to thank all of those who are volunteers. Without the team of volunteers, the charity would be unable to function. And I know that online training has proved a beneficial addition to the different schemes of training on offer. So as volunteers, you are quite literally the lifeblood of the charity. And your selfless contribution means that countless people have been able to turn their lives around. The basis upon which Wycombe Homeless Connection was founded, never to see people having to live on the street or to have to face losing their home, has given hope to countless people. Hope for a better future, hope that housing issues can be resolved before a crisis happens, and hope that those in the greatest need of support can be reached to enable them to live securely. This is about human dignity and the compassionate, non-judgmental work which Wycombe Homeless Connection does is an immense source of solace and encouragement to some of the most vulnerable in our society. Finally, I can't finish without mentioning Sheena again. Without her, this charity would never have come into existence. She has literally given the last 16 years of her life to developing this charity. Her deep faith has guided her vision and her determination to address the problems of homelessness. Her actions have been like a pebble thrown into a pond. The ripples have spread out, reaching further and further into our communities. And through her charismatic leadership, she has taken the charity to new levels. We are, of course, sorry to see her step down, but we also know that the charity will be in very good hands when Kate takes over later on. Or have you already taken it? You've already taken it. Congratulations, Sheena, and thank you for all you've done for the community. And if there's a final message we should take home from this evening, it is that by working together, we can help alleviate some of the hardships and suffering caused by housing problems. And that the resilience, which has been shown throughout such a difficult year, will enable us to move forward with confidence and hope.
Thank you so much, Lady Dale. Yeah, I'm James Folkley, and I'm CEO of Wycombe Wanderers Football Club. And my purpose for getting up here really is to tell you a little bit about the year that's gone, what we've been up to as a charity. Hopefully, make it a little bit real for you and chat a little bit about some of what's gone on. I thought I might start with some numbers, just help you to get an idea. First of all, profile of people that have come to us in the last year. So I pulled off some numbers and I found out some interesting things. 25% of the people that came to us over this last 12 months had dependent children. So that's people that are currently looking after under 18s. Many of those were people who were at risk of homelessness. And our job is to try and keep them in their home, keep the family together. But some were people who were sofa surfing already in temporary accommodation, often in overcrowded and very uncertain conditions. 50% of people that came to us over the last 12 months reported having mental health issues. And that's growing, because I look back at what the equivalent number was 5 years ago, and it was 40% then. So that's more and more people, and that kind of reflects growing instances of mental health issues in the general population. I also found out that the rate of reporting having mental health issues is double in the clients that come to us compared to the general population. 10% of people that came to us had learning difficulties. I actually think that's quite an upsetting number, isn't it? That's quite a significant minority of people that end up homeless or at risk of homelessness. I've got learning difficulties, just making it even more challenging. Another one that I thought was quite interesting though, only 10% of people that came to us had substance misuse issues. So issues with alcoholism perhaps, or drug addiction. That may be a little lower than some people would think. It's not the primary cause of homelessness that we see. So that's a little bit about who's come to us. How about what we achieved? So over the last 12 months, we prevented 35 households from losing their homes. And it costs £3,384 per successful instance of preventing homelessness. And this is something really interesting that we calculated this year. It costs society, costs the local economy, the council, the government, £20,000 every year for somebody to be homeless. This is the cost of extra services, intervention in hospitals, sometimes police, the time that, charity work is put in, housing officers and the council. If somebody is in temporary accommodation as well, the record numbers of people in temporary accommodation is more like £30,000 every year. So by preventing 35 households from becoming homeless, we've probably saved the local economy somewhere around £1 million in the last year. So as well as all that completely unnecessary suffering that would have happened, I think that's really exciting. And it got me thinking a little bit. I was at the Clare Foundation this morning hearing a really interesting talk about the family drug and alcohol court. I won't go into too many details, but it's really cool if you Google it. But it's a whole different way of handling what happens when somebody's at risk of having their children removed from a much more collaborative, builds in their help and tries to make it work for them so the family can stay together. And they were explaining that it's quite expensive to do it that way, but it prevents potentially a lifetime and actually generations of having that trauma passed on and needing services for the long term. It really got me thinking about how homelessness is a bit of a cliff edge sometimes, isn't it? If you go over it, it causes so many knock-on effects, so many other services have to be involved. It can take decades for people to recover from just being homeless. and it can just have so many knock-on effects. And as I've said, it's incredibly expensive to leave people homeless. So preventing it is it's so important, and I'm really proud of the fact that we've kept 35 households in their home where they were imminently facing homelessness. On top of that, we have also managed to get 62 people out of homelessness into suitable housing over the last 12 months. So well done team, well done volunteers. I thought you might like to hear about winter accommodation. Quite often actually, even now, even a few years after we have last run our night shelter, people do ask, are you thinking of running a night shelter again? What's happening? What are you doing instead? So last winter, we collaborated with Buckinghamshire Council to put on a winter accommodation project that lasted for 4 months, so longer than we were able to put it on when we were doing it alone. And there were 15 bed spaces, and everybody had an individual room. We took over a whole B&B unit to do it. So that was a really, really good model. Buckinghamshire Council fund the accommodation, we provide the support, we provide the extras, helping people to move on sustainably, helping get people checked in, popping down there, checking how people are doing. And I'll tell you later on in this meeting what we're planning to do this coming year as well. This last year also saw us getting more active in Cheshire again. I'm really pleased to be able to say that, because 20% of the people that come to us are from the Cheshire area. And Cheshire's got a considerably smaller population than Wycombe, so it just shows how much the need is there. And for quite a few years, people from Cheshire have been able to get in touch with us by phoning us, emailing us. We really want to be back there on the ground, having a drop-in session that people can come to in person. And we've started that up again. I know more and more people are finding us there and getting that help, and that's got a bit of the homelessness prevention focus, that one, because there's not huge numbers of people rough sleeping in Cheshire, but real great opportunity to prevent more people losing their homes and hopefully getting out there to where people are, catching people quicker, all the more possible to make a difference. We have really begun to feel the cost of living crisis this past 12 months. Partly it means our expenses as a charity are rising faster than ever before. It's also that the number of people coming into our support centre has just shot up in the last few months. Between April and August, it more than tripled the number of people that are coming into our support centre to see us. Interestingly, another thing that's gone up in the past 12 months, Wycombe saw the fastest rise in average rents anywhere in the country. And during the time that those rents were rising, 22.5% in the 12 months to April this year, the rate that people could claim housing benefit was frozen. So the gap between what you can claim if you're on benefits, which can be for a variety of reasons, you could be laid off work, sick, all sorts of possible reasons, elderly, get your pension, that gap is just getting huge. And I asked one of our support workers this last week, is anything still affordable? Not really. It's, so it surprises people to find actually for a lot of us, if we were renting and we lost work and we're hoping to use that safety net we think is going to be there, it won't cover the essential expenses. Tonight, probably around 20 people are sleeping out in Wycombe, which I think that is a sobering thought, isn't it? To think in the rain that we've all sort of dodged to get here. I'm afraid to say it's going back up. During the pandemic, we did manage to get that right down. We had a brilliant everyone in scheme. But I think just the impact of the cost of living crisis is really, really hitting, and lots of people are finding themselves homeless. Now that's the kind of gloomy picture. I don't want to sort of make out it's all just awful and we're wallowing in it, because we're also trying to speak up about this. Just this week, we were really, really privileged to have a visit from a government minister. It was the Minister for Social Mobility, sorry. Yeah. Mims Davies MP, the Minister for Social Mobility, Youth and Progression. But the crucial thing really about it is she's the person that decides things like, I'm sure it's in collaboration with the rest of the government, but she has a big hand in deciding what to do about local housing allowance rates. Not only were we able to talk to her about how desperate that's making things in Wycombe, one of our clients also joined us and told his story, and it was very powerful. And I know Ed is going to say a little bit more about his actual story, but I think that was a really good opportunity to speak up for our clients and what's going on. And not only that, Heather was also asked to join a meeting with the Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, also in the last 2 weeks, so we've had a busy couple of weeks, but just really important chance to be out there telling people about what's going on and what's needed and what we need to see if we're going to get on top of this, because I don't think anybody wants to see these numbers of people homeless. One other really unique opportunity we've had over this last year, actually, which Countess Al briefly mentioned, was an art project. So I say it in the same sort of bit of my talk, really, because that was another opportunity for our clients to actually speak. And a photographer named Craig Easton did a project where he took a series of portraits, really brilliant photographs of some of our clients, and we did this with Aylesbury Homeless Action Group. And alongside it, just really simple, they told their story in their own words, and he printed that alongside the pictures. So if you haven't seen that project, do grab me, because I can get you a copy of the sort of newspaper that was produced. It was really, really impactful. And I think a lot of us actually found that even though we've been doing this work for a while, it's all really hit just reading in their own words and seeing those pictures. So it's, I think to sum up, this has been a tough year. This is a tough year for a lot of people that are needing the help, and for a lot of charities. But it's another year that I've been really proud to be part of this organisation, to see the amazing work and the results that we can achieve. So let me hand over to Heather, who will tell you a little bit more.
Thank you, James. Yes, I'm Heather. I'm the fundraising manager at Wycombe Wanderers Connection, and it is once again my honour and privilege to spend a few moments thanking some people without whose dedication, generosity, prayer support and care, we simply wouldn't be here doing all the things you've been hearing James just speak about. But first, as James just mentioned as well, I wanted to start with a little story of this man who came and very bravely told his story to Mims Davies MP earlier this week. He was a plumber his whole life. He had worked for a local company. His relationship had unfortunately broken down a few years previously, and he was in a house that he couldn't really afford anymore. His rent had gone up, and as James has just outlined, his housing benefit didn't reach the rent anymore. And just a few months before he retired, the company he was working for, somewhat dodgily, offered him some retirement options, and he found himself out of work. He told us how he used his pension pot to make up the shortfall in his rent, but had soon gone through the entire pot and ended up in even more rent arrears. This exacerbated health conditions. He was very poorly. He had heart disease, he had arthritis, and as come to a surprise to no one, exceptionally poor mental health. That was when he came to us. I asked him how he found out about us, and he went, "Someone told me." And I said to him, that's everything to us, that someone just told you. So if you can take one thing away from tonight, tell people about what we do, please. And we helped him. We helped him apply for local social housing. He was successful in March of this year to get a property with Red Kite Housing, one he could afford on his pension and housing benefit. He is still facing huge challenges. He's still working with us and Citizens Advice Bureau, but he was telling us how incredibly happy he was. And let me say that every single time he mentioned his pet dog, his face lit up. And he was incredibly happy and grateful. And he didn't need asking twice when we realised we wanted one of the people we serve to tell their story to the MP. He didn't. We rang him up and he was like, I'll be there, I want to tell my story. So thank you to him, and we will hopefully be telling his story a little bit more as well. And when I was listening to him, I was reminded of a phrase we heard a lot in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, when, I don't know if you remember it, but people were saying, we may not all be in the same boat, but we're facing the same storm. And I was thinking of this, and although our priority as a charity is always and always will be to support people who are homeless or facing homelessness, this storm is, and the storm, as James has said, is clearly causing a huge increase in the need for our services. It's also hitting people across our community in different ways. Businesses, churches and faith groups, schools, community organisations and charities like us. If you saw our latest appeal, you'd have seen, as James has mentioned, the number of people coming to our support centre has tripled. And actually, I was looking at some more numbers, and I think I could now hand on heart say it's quadrupled. And donations have dipped significantly. James is going to give you a little update on our financial situation shortly, but it shouldn't be a surprise that we're in what is widely considered the toughest fundraising environment the UK has ever seen. Many, many amazing causes need help and are doing incredibly important work, and many people simply have less ability to give. But this is the wonderful bit, and this is where I'm hoping we'll get a picture up in a moment. I'm looking at my lovely saviour Simon. I'm going to skip all the way through till we find my name and then some pictures afterwards. That's it. Yeah, sorry. Simon has saved my soul tonight with his amazing AV-ness, but we've had a few little teething problems, but bless you, Simon, thank you so much. This is the good bit, because amazing people are still doing amazing things and giving inspiration and giving sacrificially so that we can still be here and do all the things you heard James talking about. I can't name everyone, so first of all, thank you everyone. But I wanted to introduce you to Gordon, who challenged himself to kayak 88 miles and raise £1,000. But the thing that blows my mind is that he did this in the year before his 88th birthday. That's why he picked 88 miles. He'd probably got another mile done if he tried to get across the car park if he could have been with us tonight. But how about that? Thank you, Gordon. Next slide, please. This is Isla. Now, if you don't know, I'm a Brownie Guide leader. Isla is not in my pack, but that's just the reason, one of the reasons I picked Isla's story. She's a Brownie, and you might think we all do our hostess badge and our dance badge. There's now a charities badge, and Isla was doing her charities badge, and she chose to support Wycombe Wanderers Connection and challenged herself to do 200 skipping rope skips, every day for a week. Not only did she manage that, she did 200 extra, and Isla, she doesn't mind me saying this, she's got ADHD, so taught herself to skip. She hadn't skipped before she took on this challenge. It took her quite a lot of time because she's got some coordination and focus issues that she has to overcome, but she did it and raised £650. Leaders in the room, she did a good turn, didn't she? So well done, Isla. Next slide, please. Here's a little selection of our challenge eventers. In one of the growing areas of fundraising, there are only a few, is people taking on all sorts of different physical challenges to raise money for charity. And here's just a little selection, and there are a couple of faces I'd like to draw your attention to. Down here in the corner, this is Brenda, and she did this swim serpentine, 2-mile swim, just a few weekends ago, which was almost called off at the last moment because of some blue-green algae in the serpentine, but she went ahead. Lola, who unfortunately can't be with us tonight, but she's our business and finance manager, joined us earlier this year. She took on the 10K London run just a few weeks ago, so she's really got, she's clearly caught the culture, and me kind of going nudge, nudge, wink, wink. She went straight for it. And you'll see a couple of pictures of our lovely new chair, Kate, as well, who along with Lizzie took on the Thames Path Challenge, which is no small challenge, and we're very grateful. Thank you all to you. Next slide, please. One of our amazing supporters is Creed Food Services, who over the years have supplied us with lots of yummy treats, and some of the drinks you've got tonight are from them. They're based down in Wycombe Green, but they're a national charity. And they got in touch earlier this year and said, we want to find out more, what else could we do? And so we invited them in and talked them through some of the things that they could potentially help with. And what the most amazing thing they did for us was they took on the challenge of cleaning our support centre, which, as you've heard, is a very busy place. But we closed it for 2 days, and they cleaned and painted and dusted and lifted and moved and got rid of all that detritus that charities like us accumulate. Dump runs, taking furniture to local charity shops, and more. It's now it's cleaner. And one of the things that we really try hard to do is make it a warm, welcoming environment and be a trauma-informed environment. So it's not too cluttered, it's not overwhelming for anyone who comes in, and they've really helped us do that. So thank you to Creed Food Services. Now those are just a few examples of what people have been doing in our community, and I wanted to mention a few opportunities that are coming up, because we need you. We cannot do this alone. Fundraising is not a one-person job. I have a lovely team who help me, but it is for everyone. And whether or not you can give individually, or whether you can tell people, or whether you can mention it to your mission officer at church, or whether you can mention it to the kids' schools, or anything like that, we need the word to be out there. But there are some opportunities coming up, so next slide, please. Jordan's Picture House. Alan is here tonight. Where's he gone? Right, there you are, Alan. Alan and I have been working very closely on this the last couple of weeks. Jordan's Picture House, based in Jordan's Village, was established on a 3-month trial by volunteers back in 2016 with the aim of providing accessible, affordable community cinema in the heart of their village. It's now firmly established, and the team love to help other charities, and last year they did some fundraising and donated £600 to us, but this year they've set their sights even higher. And today I'm really pleased to announce that this year they'll be supporting us through their winter and Christmas season, encouraging cinema goers to donate while buying their tickets. We've done a bit of techie magic and put a little donate button on their website. They're donating all the proceeds from ticket sales in December at their screening of the film What's Love Got to Do With It as well, and they'll be taking collections at the showings as well. Thank you, Alan. It's absolutely amazing what people are doing. Grab a ticket. We've got flyers and posters at the back promoting these incredible films, this incredible event. Again, if you could just pop one up on the notice board at church or school or the library or the community, please spread the word. So it's going to be a great event with great people, a great location, and I have to say it's a great cause that you're raising money for, so thank you very much. Who's booked their spot at the Marlow Sands Fun Run? You know, well, she works for me, so she has to. We are thrilled to have been chosen by the Marlow Rotary Club, who run the, I'm going to call it world famous, Santa's Fun Run, which takes place on the first weekend in December, and we're one of the leading charities that will benefit this year. They raise tens of thousands of pounds that goes between different charities, and if you sign up to join, it's a 5k fun run, and it is a fun run. You can take the dog, you can take the kids in the pushchair, you can go in your wheelchair, you can go around and do whatever you like. You get your Santa outfit into the bargain. And if you can join a team, you can do it on your own, and it's an amazing event. Literally 3,000 Santas start on Marlow High Street and peg it around the town and Higginson Park. We're going to be there. I have been nagging the team to sign up, and I'm not making eye contact with any of them right now. But we really want to have as many people there to take part as possible. So again, let people know. If it's not your thing, I get that, but let people know. And next slide, please. I haven't mentioned this yet. People keep asking. We have moved the big sleep out of the time. It's usually end of November, but I thought, having spoken to a lot of people who have taken part in the sleep out, we decided we needed a different challenge. It's going to be in early March. We are going to be here, we are going to have at home, and we're looking for 2 more venues, so I might, if I've got my eye on some people that I'm going to be coming and talking to. It's going to be colder, it's going to be harder, it's going to be something that people will really sponsor their friends to do. I think it's an act of solidarity. We never know what it's like to truly be street homeless unless it happens to us. But when we swap our beds to sleeping bags and spend one night in the cold, in the wet, in the damp, on cardboard, on concrete, we might be able to go and say, this is actually something that is life-threatening, and we need to do something about it. So we have tried to refresh the big sleep out by moving it into the winter, which is when we would normally have been doing the night shelter. We don't normally run it in November, we would have been doing the night shelter in January, February, March. So we're going to be doing it in March. Keep your eyes out, we'll be launching it soon. And again, rustle up as much support as you can. If it's not your thing, you can still encourage people to take part. And if you have any other ideas, if you want to get involved in any other way, all of these things are quite physical, but you might want to do a sponsored book read, a sponsored silence, you might want to do bake sales or cookery classes or anything that kind of inspires you. We're here to help. Me and my team can provide you with all the support you need. Please don't hesitate to get in touch. And now, last slide, please. I'll try not to get emotional, actually. Our volunteers are amazing. We've been said a couple of times already, they are amazing. They are flexible, they are versatile, they are kind, they make you cups of tea, they answer the phone, they welcome people who need, who come. I mean, we had someone this week come to the door who was battered, and they get a warm welcome. And it's our volunteers who give up their time and their effort and their energy and their love. And I thank God for them on a daily basis. I was writing an application for a grant last week, totting up the hours of time that is given by people to make up just our support work. I mean, homelessness prevention, admin, fundraising events, all of those things happen, but I was looking at support work. And I added up the amount of hours that people give to run support centre, to run plug-in, to run the Cheshire drop-in, to sort clothes, to sort food. And it comes to nearly 3,500 hours a year. And that's a balmy number. That's 2 full-time staff, basically, if we were there all the time doing that. And it's only an indication of the huge impact that our volunteers make, but they are the heart of everything we do. And the difficult, dizzying, traumatizing, inspiring, elating tasks that people do to help people find a home. You guys have knocked my socks off, and I know I speak on behalf of Andrew as well, our volunteering coordinator, who's joined us and revitalised our volunteering in the last year. So thank you as well, Andrew, wherever you are. To say thank you to all our volunteers as well. Thank you so much for everything you've done, everything you continue to do. Please don't hesitate to grab me to talk about anything fundraising. And you're going to get an email soon if you're on our email list about a bunch of stuff we need help with over Christmas. We need you. Thank you very much. And I'm now pleased to hand over to Sam from the Centre for Social Justice.
Lord Lieutenant, Mayor, Chair, Trustees, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having me this evening. On behalf of Social Justice, I want to extend our thanks for the invitation to share a short address. Your work is so invaluable. How inspiring it is to hear stories of the work that you're doing here in your town and place. Public policy can only do so much to address housing and homelessness issues. It's crucial, of course, but it's the tireless work of voluntary and charitable organisations, often unsung heroes of addressing some of these most acute issues that we face across the country. I'd like to share a little bit about myself and the CSJ and reflect this evening on housing, homelessness and how we can tackle it together. So I'm Sam Bruce, I'm Head of Housing and Communities at the CSJ. We are a non-party political think tank, so we work on social policy issues across the board, and we look at the root causes of poverty, and we try and look at that in the lens of I'm not as short as other people. Sorry, I'm not as tall. That's not much better. Project a bit more, okay.
Carry on.
Is that better?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm slightly sore throat as well, so I'll try and project a bit more. So we look at what we traditionally call the 5 pathways to poverty. Family breakdown, problem debt, educational failure, unemployment and crime. And this has led to quite broad-ranging engagement on social policy. We've looked at things like the welfare state, so the universal credit system was originally designed by our policy team. It wasn't implemented in exactly the way that we would have liked and with exactly the level of generosity that we would have liked, but nevertheless, the broad lineaments of the system it came from our innovation. And other areas as well, like the Modern Slavery Act, the recent implementation of family hubs, the scheme of universal support, were all came from CSJ policymaking, but that couldn't have happened without what we see as crucial to our work, which is a very close connection with small local charities, often charities that don't have, wouldn't want to have a policy team doing research and advocacy from within their own organisations. So we're delighted to connect with organisations across the country in that way. So I'm Head of Housing and Communities. I look after a broad range of areas to do with housing, from housing supply through to homelessness, and also in terms of strengthening local communities as well, so looking at high streets and the charitable sector in local areas and how these can all work together to reduce poverty and social disadvantage. And I'd like to reflect a little bit today under the 3 headings, and I've taken these in a rather unsubtle way from your own charity's name. I should also say we're not party politically aligned. We're also not a faith-based organisation. We work extensively with organisations that do come from a faith-based tradition, and I would share with Wycombe Homeless Connection the faith-based approach to the issue of homelessness. So I'll share in a personal way a bit about that and how we can think through housing from that perspective as well this evening. So the first heading I'd like to think through is the word Wycombe. Does anyone know what the word Wycombe means? Coombe on the Y, quite possibly. The Coombe being a wooded valley, Y being a river. That's what many people think it means, but I certainly would have suspected it means. I'm told that there's actually an older word which goes back to wick and ham in Old English, and wick certainly means dwellings, to dwell, to have a home. And so the first concept I'd like to just unpack for a moment is, what is a home? What does a home mean? What's a dwelling? And I'm going to draw through this talk a little bit on some of the biblical tradition in some of these concepts. So we see at the very beginning of the Bible, God fashions a material world in which people dwell together. There's an expression in creation of extraordinary creativity, and that beauty, homemaking, the adornment of the natural world matters. It's an act of service given to humanity, wanting people to flourish, and wanting there to be a place for family life to thrive, for people together. And we see in the Old Testament of God wanting to dwell among his people in the tabernacle, in the Temple of Solomon, great efforts are on to adorn these dwelling places with beauty. And of course, in the magisterial opening chapter of St. John's Gospel, which is familiar to us all, in the 9 lessons and carols we hear every Christmas, God dwelt among us. God dwells among us. And so the concept of home and dwelling is very important in the Christian tradition that I know inspires the charity's work. And dear friends of mine work on this as an idea, as a concept, as a topic. Sally and Sarah Clarkson, mother and daughter, and they've written a book called The Life-Giving Home, Creating a Place of Belonging and Becoming. They write about the home. Home is not merely a dwelling, it's not merely a state of existence, it's a story. A narrative spun out day by day, a story moulded by the walls and hours and tasks and feasts with which we fill our time, reflecting on the reality of God whose love animates every aspect of our being. And that's one. I'm not saying everyone has to view home through this theological lens, but I think it's a helpful, inspiring, interesting way to look at things. And I think that contrasts so starkly with, in many ways, how we see home as an idea in our contemporary world, in our contemporary society. And we can see that as a society we don't reflect the importance of having homes and access to housing in our economy, in the way our life is structured together. House prices over the last 30 years or so have gone from being about 4 times median income to more than 8 times median income. And since 1997. In 2021-22, there were 232,820 net additional dwellings in the UK, which might seem like a lot, and indeed compared to recent years, it is actually quite a lot. But this is a substantial shortfall from the housing target that we set nationally of 300,000 homes. And objective academic assessments say that we actually need 340,000 homes to provide sufficient amount of housing for the number of people and households in the country. So animating all kind of issues to do with housing and homelessness in every area, from people struggling to get on the housing ladder through to acute homelessness, is this backdrop of very poor housing supply, which I think stands in stark contrast to that broader picture of taking seriously the importance of making and building homes as places for people to thrive in. And there are many policy problems behind this that we're working on at the Centre for Social Justice. The government does try to build affordable housing. It's not always that affordable. In fact, research that we did showed that less than 1 in 4 people believe that the government's definition of affordable housing is truly affordable to local people. There is some social housing, but there are 1.2 million households on social housing waiting lists in England. House prices have risen substantially through not just through low interest rates over the last years, but also through demand-side subsidies. We've stoked the demand side of the market, and that hasn't actually led to the supply increase that we needed. We have a discretionary planning system, everything running on a case-by-case basis, which is conducive to endless delays and dithering decision-making, which gets stuck in the process. There's also a housing market which leaves very little room for small and medium-sized businesses to enter and make meaningful competition, which means that often prices for new build housing is high, profit margins are very high, and quality can be squeezed. So this vision of how important the home and house is stands in contrast to where we are as a nation from the perspective of housing supply. Can everyone still hear me? Is this working? And so we've been working on solutions to this problem. Many of them are very long-term structural kinds of solutions. Skills, for example, is one issue. In the retrofitting and house building sectors, that's something we could address more quickly. Developer contribution reform, how much developers contribute to affordable housing when they develop housing in local areas. Resourcing in the planning system. Planning officers take a lot of time to process planning cases, and this can lead to delays. But above all, the use of land. We need land to be available for housing development, and the planning system that we have incentivises delays over bringing that forward. And also the use of public land. We have a lot of public land in this country, surprising amount, and we're not, the National Audit Office has shown how we've not performed well in making use of that asset to develop more homes. But there's also a cultural issue here. We are a democracy, and spoken about the importance of homemaking, and going back again to this ancient tradition of thinking about the home, there's another contrast with our contemporary culture, which is that we can make too much of the home. A lot of discussions about the built environment in the Old Testament see the built environment as a way of looking at something to be appreciated, but something looking to something greater good, something more meaningful in life. Psalm 84 says, "How lovely is your dwelling place, Lord Almighty. My soul yearns, even faints, for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living God. Even the sparrow has found a home, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may have her young. A place near your altar, Lord Almighty." This is the psalm that goes on to talk about better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. And so the biblical tradition invites us to think about the home as something to be valued, but not something as an ultimate good to be clung on to the detriment of the common good. And I think this should give us pause for thought as a culture when it comes to our thinking collectively about the planning system and how we resist or seek to block the development of new housing in our country. I'm aware that this is a hotspot in Buckinghamshire of planning issues, so I don't want to wade into an area that I'm sure has plenty of public debate around these issues. But I can see how one of the major events, of course, in the last few years was the Cheshire and Lancashire by-election. It's widely understood in Westminster that led to the dropping of what would have been a generational reform in the planning system, which may well have had its flaws. And it's actually sparked a lot of really interesting and innovative thinking in the world of planning and participatory planning as well. So I know Cheshire as a town is going through this, and working organisations like Create Streets, well worth looking at, have done a lot to involve local people in trying to encourage and build trust in the planning system. So I think that's something to think about as well, is that we're trying to paint the picture to begin with of our broad attitude to housing in the built environment, and how that, whether some of the economic issues are, but also where some of the cultural issues might be, and how that fits into our democratic decision making. So that's the longest section, Wycombe, about dwelling. But homeless, the second word, is also a theme that runs deeply through this ancient tradition. It runs through many other traditions as well, through ancient Greek thought, all of which form our contemporary culture as well, and are deeply in our cultural hinterland. Of course, right at the very beginning of the Bible, again, we have the displacement of Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden. We have slavery and bondage in Egypt, displacement from there into the wilderness, and a longing for the promised land, a longing for a home. We have the destruction of the temple, the dwelling place of God. And in the book of Isaiah, we have a lament of this. Our holy and our beautiful house, where our fathers praise thee, is burned up with fire, and all our pleasant things are laid waste. The idea of homelessness and the longing for a home is deeply within that tradition. And of course, this is seen in the example of Jesus, who was born to displaced parents living in temporary accommodation. He's someone who had a ministry of several years where he had no fixed abode, and the writer Samuel Crossman in 1684 puts it this way: "In life, no house, no home, my Lord on earth might have. In death, no friendly tomb, but what a stranger gave. What may I say? Heaven was his home, but mine the tomb in which he lay." And so the example of Jesus can animate something that people who struggle with homelessness can relate to, and can inspire, and I know here is inspiring, the desire to minister and offer support to those who are at the margins of society, just as he might minister to those who are destitute, despised, socially isolated, and in poverty, and treating people with dignity and calling them by their name. And how does this sit as a picture in contrast to our social and economic picture in the UK today? Well, today we have 3,069 people who were rough sleeping in 2022 when the official snapshot data was taken. That's across the whole UK. And this is a rise following several years of decline. We also know that homelessness is about much more than rough sleeping. As we've heard tonight, there are so many people who are sofa surfing, living in bed and breakfast, in shelters. Often that's a crucial form of support in a time of need, but it's not an ideal long-term solution for people. In total, 140,790 households were assessed as being threatened with homelessness in the last year, and 104,510 households are living in temporary accommodation, including 131,370 children in temporary accommodation. It's a staggering number, and it's risen very substantially. It's the record we have. It's risen very substantially over the last several years. There are many entrenched factors causing this problem of homelessness, including the supply factors mentioned earlier, but we should also remember that housing affordability, it comes from many other kinds of pressures. We've also heard about local housing allowance being frozen despite record inflation in rents in recent years. And we should think about broader social issues too. We can't ignore that homelessness is connected to other issues like family breakdown and social relationship fragmentation. Many people are made homeless through tragic breakdowns of relationship between partners and also parents with children. And then we also see aspects including issues like social isolation, substance misuse, financial challenges, involvement with crime, disengagement with education, mental health, and in many homelessness charities that I speak to, past traumatic experiences can lead to homelessness as well in many cases. So an awareness of all of those have to come into that package. So there are many things that the government is wanting to do, has done. There was a homelessness strategy introduced last year, but there is one thing that we think is crucial to dealing with acute homelessness, and that is the final word, connection. Housing is about more than just bricks and mortar. It's all about having that rich, really meaningful relational support that enables people to flourish and thrive on their own, and so and in community. And this again is deeply rooted within the Christian tradition, because the Trinity is one God and three persons, so it's a deeply Christian idea that relationships and connections between people should inform our approach to society and social problems. And in relation to this, our key policy focus has been on the idea of a housing first approach to the homelessness issue. Now, housing first is a specific model which can be easily misunderstood. It does involve offering people in the first instance housing, where they have choice over where they can live, they can exercise agency, but crucially it doesn't stop with just housing. It's also about really effective social support that's wraparound, that enables people to build trusting relationships with those who can support them. And I'm delighted to see the work you're doing here, which really champions this approach. It's absolutely crucial. and we can see how this has been really effective. We campaigned for pilots, and this has happened in Birmingham, in Manchester, and Liverpool. And there's been really good evidence from these pilots. In fact, we hosted a conversation between one beneficiary and then Secretary of State, Jenrick, and she said, Grace, not her real name, said to the Secretary of State, "It's been like my recovery record. So I've got proof for social services that I've kept clean, and I've kept it to these appointments. I'm engaging with all the right services for me to help me get my children back. If I didn't have this support, I wouldn't have this record put in place to show that I've done so well. It's done really a lot for my life. I don't know where I'd be if it wasn't for Housing First. It made a big difference to my life. I didn't have hope. I was lost. It gave me hope." We see the effectiveness of this kind of support. However, despite great success in that programme, with over 80% of tenants sustaining their tenancy in Manchester, we're yet to see a full national rollout for this programme. So when it comes to addressing homelessness, that's what we're really seeking for in terms of policy. She went on to say, "I just feel so lucky. I hope more people get a chance to go through what I went through, to get the answers at the end, to be the person that you want to be, because people give up on themselves. You feel like people have given up on you. Housing First showed me something that no one else did. It made me see that I can do this. It gave me a second chance. People deserve second chances, and I'm so grateful that I've got given this second chance through Housing First." And that's the power of what this kind of intervention can do for people. It really can help people address not merely the lack of a house, but the lack of a home, the lack of relational, social fabric in which they can thrive. And so it's wonderful to see the work that you're doing here. I can see how it's such a natural outworking of the Christian ethos on which this charity is built. And so I just want to finish by saying three things. Firstly, thank you for all the work that you're doing in tackling homelessness. Frontline relationships with service users are not easy to develop. They take real skill to sustain, and there's immense power in them. So thank you for everything you're doing there. And thank you to everyone else who makes this happen. I know running a charity is not easy. I speak to a lot of charities and I really see the difficult environment that we have today. It's really among the most difficult times in memory, with the cost of living crisis affecting both demand and support available. And also thank you to Sheena for your work in starting this, and also ensuring that the sustainable future. I know how important that is, and how difficult that can be for a charity, and so it's really wonderful to see that taking place as well today. Secondly, I'd just like to encourage you in all your ambitions to keep developing and growing. Even though it's a challenging time, I really hope in some way that there's also opportunity to think big, to expand horizons, see where perhaps new people can be brought into the fold of support. It's wonderful to see kayaks and Santa suits and cinemas, all wonderful initiatives. And I've really appreciated the CSJ of working not only with charities but also with businesses, with industrial groups who are house builders, housing associations, many of whom are really keen to be supporting in the local community, and doors can be opened if you can knock on them. And I hope in some way there might be some new opportunities that come up in the coming years. And thirdly, I'd just like to open an invitation. We at the CSJ, as we think about policy, we don't want to do it in the ivory towers or being stuck in Westminster, walking around thinking we're some important policy person, because we're not. The important work is out here, and we want to listen and engage and be here to be receptive to what you're seeing on the front lines, and to know about what works and how that can be implemented effectively in Westminster and beyond. So I really open that invitation to the charity. I know you're already fantastically plugged in. How wonderful to be lobbying the very government minister responsible for NHA rates. That's a huge thing to be doing, and if we can be helpful in facilitating those relationships and connections, please do reach out to me from a housing perspective, and also a wider team. We'd be very happy to connect. And with that, I'd like to thank you very much for listening, and wish you all the very best in the year ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sam. Yeah, thank you. That was a really, really good opportunity to pause, reflect on not just our work, but what's behind it, what drives it. So my last reason for being up here, this will be fairly brief, is a little look at what's coming up, looking ahead. And what I won't do is just give you a list of the rest of what's on our annual plan for the year, or go into just all these great details. Really, I wanted to say that we are facing difficult times. There is a bit of a gloomy picture at the moment in some ways. The government say that they're going to need more and more cash just to keep the same level of services running. Partly because of the ageing population, slow growth in the economy. If you look at the wider world, things aren't looking too great at the moment either. I think we're going to need to be here. I think this charity is going to need to be here for quite some time. I think, thank goodness, for the vision of the people 16 years ago that set it up. I think there really is a need to look forward into the future and think what's going to be different in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. How do we begin to prepare? So one big thing that we're going to be looking at actually in the rest of this year is making a bigger, bolder 5-year strategy that we're going to be involving our staff, trustees, volunteers, supporters of all types, other organisations we work with. Big goal for us in the rest of this year is to be looking deeply at how can we make this charity even more effective. I wanted to tell you what we're planning to do this winter for accommodation. As I acknowledged earlier, I know people are really interested to know what we're doing for the winter. We're not planning to run the night shelter this year either. I'm really excited. This year we are already at the point with Buckinghamshire Council that we've confirmed the plan. There will again be 15 bed spaces available, emergency accommodation from late November all the way until the end of March. Because we've had that extra time to plan this year, more volunteer involvement. We're looking at putting in haircut sessions, the nice extras, the things that actually used to make a night shelter a really, good feeling project to be involved in. And I hope we can make this the best winter that we've ever had, actually, for getting people off the streets in that coldest weather. Nobody should be sleeping out there. Nobody should be sleeping out there tonight. But we're well on the way to getting this open. Heather mentioned that I would say a brief word about our financial situation. I'm not going to go into detail. There's no pie charts. I don't think I'm actually planning to mention any numbers at all, but I think we should say we are spending our reserves at the moment. We're not the only charity, a lot of charities are in their reserves at the moment, but this really is just to echo what Heather said earlier. We really do need support. This is such an amazing turnout on a night like this. I know we've got tons of support. I've been working with the Homeless Connection for 11 years now, seeing what generous area we live in. There's so many people that care, just as we do. But this may be the time we need it most. But that might be a good thing for me to end on, so I said I wouldn't be too long. And over to Kent.
thank you very much. I'm very honoured to be taking this. I've just taken over very recently as chair of this amazing organisation. I would wish to be able to say that we didn't have to be here for too long, but unfortunately that's not the way it's looking, is it, with the need that's increasing. So and I apologise that we are slightly overrunning, but we will release you soon for refreshments. I'd like to say a big thank you to Lady Howe for all her support throughout the year, for everything that she does for us, and for her welcome this evening, which did steer a little bit of what I was going to say, but that's okay. I think that in terms of Sheena, the more we say it, we can't say enough really, can we? So I will be repeating, I apologise for some of what was said earlier. I'd really like to thank Samuel for accepting our invitation as a keynote speaker and in giving us a bit of an insight into policy making and challenging our thinking from a biblical perspective. That was very interesting, I have to say, the way you took us back there in sort of what's said in the Bible as the origins of really where we're coming from in treating everybody with respect and wanting them to have a home. Thank you very much to Wycombe Wanderers for hosting this evening. Simon at the back, he's hiding away behind the screen from where I can see, but waving at us for stepping in to do the AV. It is very much appreciated. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. I know the weather was pretty horrendous, but we really do appreciate your support. One thing I was thinking about as Heather was going through the wonderful fundraising activities that are happening is one thing that those of you maybe that were looking at some of those pictures and were thinking of challenge events, one thing we should never forget is the support of prayer. And we really do appreciate every single one of you that prays for the staff, for the volunteers, and for the people that we work with. We should not forget how powerful that is. And we do definitely thank all of those of you that do pray for us. I'd like to thank James and Heather for their contributions this evening. As always, been very, very enlightening in letting people know a brief view of what goes on. And I'd like to thank James and all the staff team at Wycombe Homes Connection. And a huge thank you for all that you do throughout the year. You go above and beyond frequently. And to all the volunteers who help keep this charity growing and serving those in need, we couldn't do it without you. I'd like to thank those at the back that are just preparing our refreshments. And before the final sentence, I'd just like to remind you of our timeline very, very briefly. So in 2006, Josie, a local woman who was sleeping rough, was found dead in Eastern Street car park on Christmas morning. In 2007, an open meeting was held, and in faith that resources would be provided, people decided to start a winter night shelter. 7 churches offered to host. And in 2008, Wycombe Winter Night Shelter opened in January, and guests were offered a bed, food, conversation, showers, laundry, and home. Fast forward 15 years, and the charity has gone from strength to strength. Whilst I'm sure that Sheena will be the first to say it was a team effort, we should give tremendous recognition to the impact her faith, vision and determination contributed to the success of this organisation. Without her drive and willingness to step in and resolve challenges, we may never have moved beyond an idea. So I've got some comments that have been put on the sort of collection that have been, I just thought it was better, rather than just my voice, to give you some of the voices that have been shared. So James is going to read some of the comments, and then I'm going to finish up with just comments from one of my fellow trustees.
Thank you. Yes, I've got a few, and I'm just reading out what I have here. Sheena, thank you so much for all you have done in getting Wycombe Homeless Connection started and sustained. Your dedication, commitment, expertise and leadership have been crucial, and you've gone above and beyond. Anonymous. So, thank you, Sheena, for the opportunity to be a part of this amazing organisation. Your work of putting good deeds into action is inspirational. I wish you well in the next chapter of your life. Thank you for all you have done for homeless people in Wycombe. You've established a thriving charity which has grown consistently under your leadership and will make a huge difference to many people for years to come. It's from Erica and Alan Penman. What great work you've done. You've grown, we've grown, and we are all the better for it. Wycombe has been blessed to have you and your commitment to making things better for those in need.
Some words from David Winder, one of my fellow trustees, who sent me some notes when I reached out to him. He said about Sheena, she was hands-on in the night shelter, talking to volunteers, staff and guests to see what else was needed, bringing ideas back to the office, to widen our remit, to rebuild lives, rather than just offering shelter and food. Central core was her strong faith and ability to encourage so many churches to support us and provide a steady stream of volunteers and supporters. Sheena, you are going to be so missed. We do wish you very well in your next challenges, and we will obviously welcome you back at any point. But if you'd like to come up, we'd just like to present you with some flowers. There is a book over. If people haven't seen, there's a book if you'd like to write any comments to Sheena. Just a token, Sheena.
Indeed, it's really truly humbling, and I hope I can do this without. Yes. What I wanted to say is thank you so much, because it is teamwork. The motivation is about people helping people, and I know we've talked about Josie. I wanted to make 2 points, because it's been 16 years. I've seen it from the beginning till now. I think it was helpful for me to be reflecting back to take 2 points in time. The first point was before we began, to remind ourselves of just how little there was in Wycombe at the time. Most people thought there wasn't a homeless problem in Wycombe at the time. We thought there was. There was no severe weather emergency protocol for anyone on the street. The annual count was always an estimate, around 1 to 4 people. Our first night shelter had 50 people come through it, so that estimate was clearly wrong. So the important thing was, too, that when we began, we referred to Josie as our catalyst. For me, the driving force was a man called Mark Berry. And many of you who knew in the beginning knew Mark. Mark was an archetypal tramp. That's what we would have called him in those days. He was a cheerful soul, but he was the dirtiest man I've ever seen. He would rootle around looking for fag ends and food. He was completely destitute. And he was the driving force for me, because one night he was found unconscious and hypothermic and would have died if a passerby hadn't found him. The severe weather protocol wasn't there for him. So he went into hospital, gets a little bit better, and he gets discharged back onto the street. And we saw him a week later, hands all puffy and purple, looking terrible. And I just thought, this cannot go on. And Josie was the final straw, but we were thinking about it even before then. But Mark's story doesn't stop there, because Mark was interesting. One of our volunteers, called Rosemary, noticed that he had a big scar on his forehead, a really deep scar, and wondered if he had a head injury. And we found out that he'd fallen off the balcony 14 years before. So we was away. Rosemary was amazing, trying to pin him down to get him to see the head injury service. And he did have a head injury, and he had post-head injury syndrome, which meant that he was completely incapable of organising his life, which was why he was on the street. But he lived, as he put it, like a rat for 14 years. But Rosemary didn't stop there. She beamed away and found he had a family, a very loving family in Manchester, who hadn't stayed in contact with them because he had a forwarding address, no phone. He just dropped out of their lives. He had a daughter who was a flight attendant. He had a grandson he hadn't met, and he actually went on to inherit £80,000 from his father. Mark should never have been on the streets. And it just gives me enormous satisfaction to know that nobody will ever live like a rat for 14 years on our streets ever again. Thanks to you all and all the work that you do. The other marker is 2010. It was in 2010 we thought we had housed the last bus sweeper. We all celebrated. And I remember Liv Manchester Council saying, yay, we've all housed the last bus sweeper. We can do it. But 2010 was also the start of the decade of austerity. And I don't need to tell you, you've heard it all tonight about what that has meant. And I'm just delighted that we're here to be able to help people. And I'm delighted that Sammy mentioned Housing First. Housing First has been on our agenda and our site for the last 10 years. And I just really pray that we can all come together as a county and really make it work. This will transform people's lives, even in a housing crisis. I think it can make a huge difference. So I just thank you all for all the people I've worked with. I won't go on, but you know who you all are, and thank you for charity as it is now. And just thank you for your lovely words tonight. Thank you very much. And I didn't cry.
Thank you, Sheena. That concludes our presentations this evening. Please do come, stay. There's refreshments, there's cakes. Thank you again to see you and David for providing our glorious refreshments. As Kate briefly mentioned, there is a little book if you want to write a note to Sheena or say it to her while she's here. And just point over to these displays. Angela, our lovely communications officer, has created an incredible photo book detailing the story so far of Wycombe Wanderers Connection, and because we don't want too many people with books, it's going to go to Sheena. We've printed it all out and you can have a look there as well. And yeah, please stay, talk. We might be kicking you out about 9:45 but please do stay, chat and enjoy. Thank you all so much.